The tray of champagne flutes in Olinda Valemont's hands weighed considerably less than the specific humiliation of carrying it. She had attended exactly 40 balls in her 22 years, as the daughter of a respected, if modest, gentry family, and she had never once imagined that her 41st would require her to navigate a crowded ballroom in a servant's apron, balancing crystal glasses for the entertainment of women who had, until 6 months ago, considered her a genuine social equal. Her family's financial ruin had been swift and total, her father's investments collapsing within a single devastating quarter, the family's modest fortune evaporating into debts that consumed everything they had built across 2 generations. What remained was not poverty exactly, but a precarious, humiliating proximity to it, the specific social purgatory of people who had once belonged somewhere and now belonged, definitively, nowhere. She had not expected, when Lady Pemberton's invitation arrived for this evening's grand ball, the social event of the entire season, hosted in the most magnificent townhouse London's aristocracy currently maintained, that the invitation contained, buried beneath its elegant calligraphy, an entirely different purpose than genuine social inclusion. She had arrived believing she was attending as a guest, however diminished her family's current circumstances. She had discovered within minutes of her arrival that Lady Pemberton's daughter Cecilia, who had once competed with Olinda for the same suitor's attention before Olinda's family ruin had eliminated her as genuine competition, had arranged something considerably crueler than mere exclusion. "You will find," Cecilia had said, with a smile that contained no genuine warmth whatsoever, "that we have arranged a small role for you this evening, Miss Valemont. Given your family's current circumstances, I am certain you will appreciate the opportunity for honest work, rather than the pretense of social position you can no longer genuinely claim." The apron had appeared before Olinda could formulate any adequate response. The tray of champagne had followed, and now she stood in the center of London's most glittering social event, serving the very people who had once considered her their equal, while those same people watched her humiliation with the specific cruel fascination of an audience that had paid considerable social capital to witness exactly this kind of spectacle. She moved through the ballroom with her spine straight and her expression carefully composed, refusing to give Cecilia or anyone else the satisfaction of visible distress, though the effort of maintaining that composure cost her considerably more than anyone observing could possibly have understood. "How does it feel?" one young lady asked, accepting a glass from Olinda's tray with exaggerated delicacy, as though Olinda's touch might somehow contaminate the crystal. "To finally find honest employment, Miss Valemont? I confess I have always wondered whether genuine gentility survives financial ruin, or whether it was merely performance all along." Olinda did not respond. She had learned within the first 20 minutes of this particular evening that responding only generated additional cruelty, and that silence, however difficult to maintain, represented her only available form of dignity. It was at this exact moment, standing in the center of London's most glittering social event, serving champagne to women who had once been her friends and were now her tormentors, carrying herself with a composure that cost her everything she had remaining, that she became aware someone was watching her with an expression entirely unlike the cruel fascination surrounding her on every side. She turned carefully to find a man she recognized immediately, though they had never been formally introduced. Jack Aldermere, the Duke of Aldermere, one of London's most significant unmarried aristocrats, watching her not with mockery or curious cruelty, but with an expression of genuine, focused attention that suggested he was seeing something considerably different from what everyone else in the room currently perceived. He was not laughing. He was not whispering to his companions about the spectacle's entertainment value. He was simply watching her with the particular quality of attention that recognizes dignity precisely where everyone else has decided to see only humiliation. Their eyes met across the crowded ballroom, and Olinda felt for the first time that entire devastating evening something other than carefully managed shame. Jack Aldermere had attended the Pemberton ball with no particular expectation beyond the usual exhausting performance such events required of London's most eligible bachelors. Careful conversation, polite deflection of various mothers' transparent matrimonial calculations, the specific tedium of an evening designed primarily to advance other people's social ambitions rather than provide any genuine enjoyment. He had noticed the young woman serving champagne within minutes of his own arrival, primarily because something about the situation struck him as fundamentally incongruous. Her posture, her bearing, the careful composure of her expression suggested someone considerably more accustomed to attending such events as a guest than serving at one as staff. He had asked a nearby acquaintance, with careful casualness, who she was. "Miss Olinda Valemont," the acquaintance had said, with the particular relish London's elite reserved for discussing someone else's misfortune. Formerly of genuine social standing before her father's investments collapsed rather spectacularly. Lady Pemberton's daughter arranged this evening's little demonstration, I am told, as a reminder that fortune determines one's actual place in society, regardless of how genteel one's previous bearing might have been. Jack had felt, hearing this explanation, a specific protective anger that surprised him with its intensity. He was 34 years old, the Duke of Aldermere for 9 years, having inherited his title following his father's death, and having spent those 9 years building a reputation for fair, principled management of his considerable estate and resources. He had encountered considerable cruelty within London's aristocratic circles throughout his life, but something about watching an entire room collectively participate in a young woman's calculated humiliation struck him as considerably more deliberate and considerably crueler than the usual casual unkindness society generated. He watched her move through the crowd with her champagne tray, absorbing pointed comments and careful cruelty, with a composure that struck him as remarkable given the circumstances, and he found himself, within minutes of this observation, walking directly toward her with an intention he had not fully formed before his feet began moving. "Miss Valemont," he said when he reached her, with a directness that visibly startled both Olinda and the small cluster of guests observing their exchange with sudden, attentive interest. "Your Grace," Olinda said, with a careful curtsy that nearly upset her tray, the particular composed dignity she had maintained throughout the evening now extending, with visible effort, to this entirely unexpected encounter. "I would like a glass of champagne," Jack said, "though I confess my actual purpose in approaching is considerably less about refreshment and considerably more about understanding why a woman of evident gentility and remarkable composure is currently serving guests at an event she was, I am given to understand, originally invited to attend as one." The cluster of nearby guests went very quiet, recognizing with the specific fascination London's elite reserved for any deviation from expected social choreography that something unusual was occurring. "I do not believe," Olinda said carefully, "that the explanation reflects particularly well on anyone currently present, Your Grace, including perhaps yourself, given your evident social connection to those responsible for this evening's arrangement." Jack looked at her with genuine respect for the directness of this observation. "You are entirely correct that the explanation reflects poorly on several people present," he said. "I would like to understand it regardless, because I find I have very little patience remaining for watching cruelty unfold without at least attempting to understand its actual cause." Jack did not simply express sympathy and withdraw, as Olinda had braced herself to expect. He turned, instead, with a deliberate directness that carried through the surrounding crowd, and addressed Lady Pemberton herself, who had been observing the entire exchange from several feet away with evident satisfaction at her evening's successful spectacle. "Lady Pemberton," Jack said, his voice carrying with the particular authority that 34 years of ducal bearing had instilled in him, "I am curious why a woman of Miss Valemont's evident breeding and accomplishment has been asked to serve at an event to which I understand she was originally invited as a genuine guest." The ballroom's ambient conversation diminished considerably, the specific quiet that descends when London's most powerful unmarried duke addresses a hostess directly regarding what had, until 30 seconds prior, been considered an entirely private social entertainment. Lady Pemberton's composed smile flickered. "Your Grace, I assure you this is simply a small accommodation, given Miss Valemont's family's current circumstances. We thought she might appreciate the opportunity to be humiliated in front of 300 witnesses," Jack said, with a coldness that left no room for diplomatic interpretation. "I find I struggle to identify what genuine accommodation this arrangement provides Miss Valemont, beyond considerable cruelty disguised as charitable opportunity." The silence that followed was the specific silence of an entire room, recalculating its collective assumptions, watching their evening's entertainment transform, within seconds, into something considerably more dangerous to navigate. "Your Grace," Cecilia Pemberton said, stepping forward with visible nervousness beneath her careful composure. "I do not believe you fully understand the circumstances. Miss Valemont's family—" "I understand precisely the circumstances," Jack said. "A young woman experienced devastating financial misfortune through no fault of her own, and rather than extending genuine compassion, several people present decided her misfortune constituted an opportunity for entertainment at her expense. I find this considerably more revealing of character than anything Miss Valemont's family circumstances could possibly demonstrate." He turned to Olinda, who stood frozen, the champagne tray still in her hands, watching this entire exchange unfold with an expression of stunned disbelief. "Miss Valemont," he said, "I would be honored if you would set down that tray and join me as my guest for the remainder of this evening, exactly as you were originally invited to attend. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up to a room full of people for what was right? Tell us about it in the comments." Jack's intervention that evening proved to be only the beginning of a considerably more complex investigation, because something about the deliberate cruelty of Olinda's treatment struck him as exceeding mere casual unkindness. He found himself, over the following weeks, conducting careful inquiries into exactly how the evening's humiliation had been arranged, and what he discovered revealed a conspiracy considerably more calculated than simple social cruelty. Cecilia Pemberton, it emerged through careful investigation, had not merely seized an opportunity for casual humiliation. She had specifically engineered Olinda's family financial ruin's worst possible social consequence, having learned, through her own father's business connections, that Olinda's father's catastrophic investment had actually been influenced by deliberately falsified information provided by a business associate secretly working with the Pemberton family's own financial interests. "Your father's ruin," Jack told Olinda, several weeks after the ball, in the considerably more private setting of his own townhouse drawing room, where Olinda had been invited for tea following weeks of careful, respectful courtship that had developed from his initial intervention, was not simply unfortunate misfortune. Lord Pemberton's own financial advisor deliberately provided your father false information regarding a specific investment opportunity designed to ensure exactly the catastrophic collapse that occurred. Olinda absorbed this revelation with visible shock. Why would they do this? "My father had no particular rivalry with the Pembertons. Your father's modest estate," Jack said, "happened to control water rights that Lord Pemberton required for an expansion he had been planning for several years. Ruining your father financially allowed Pemberton to acquire those rights at considerably reduced cost, once your family's desperate circumstances made any reasonable price acceptable." Olinda felt something between fury and devastating clarity settle over her. The understanding that her family's entire catastrophic collapse had not been simple misfortune, but deliberate, calculated cruelty, designed specifically to benefit the very family whose daughter had then arranged her public humiliation as an additional, almost gratuitous cruelty. "Cecilia knew," Olinda said slowly. "She knew her own father had engineered our ruin, and she still arranged that evening's humiliation, as though our suffering provided additional entertainment beyond whatever practical benefit her family had already extracted from it." "I believe she did know," Jack said. "I have gathered sufficient evidence through careful and discreet inquiry to bring this conspiracy to proper legal attention, should you wish to pursue it. I want you to understand that I am not presenting this information to generate further distress, but because I believe you deserve genuine justice, not merely my own personal intervention at a single evening's cruelty." Olinda was quiet for a long moment, processing the considerable weight of this revelation. "What would pursuing justice actually require?" she asked. "Considerable scrutiny," Jack said honestly. "Public legal proceedings that would expose the Pemberton family's conduct, but that would also inevitably expose your own family's financial circumstances to even more thorough public examination than the ball's humiliation already provided." "And if I choose not to pursue it?" "Then the Pembertons retain whatever advantage their cruelty purchased," Jack said. "I will not pretend that the outcome satisfies my own sense of justice, but I want you to make this decision based entirely on what you genuinely need. rather than what I believe should occur. Olinda looked at him with growing respect for the genuine care behind this careful deference to her own judgment. I would like to pursue it, she said finally, not for revenge precisely, though I will not pretend some satisfaction in seeing justice served does not factor into my decision. I would like to pursue it because allowing such calculated cruelty to proceed without consequence feels to me considerably more damaging than whatever additional scrutiny the proceedings might generate. Then I will support whatever pursuit you choose, Jack said, in whatever capacity proves most useful. The weeks that followed Jack's revelation about the conspiracy developed into a genuine courtship that proceeded with considerably more care and patience than either of them had initially anticipated, given how dramatically their acquaintance had begun. Jack visited regularly, ostensibly to discuss the ongoing legal proceedings against the Pemberton family, though both of them understood increasingly that the practical discussions had become simply the comfortable framework around which their actual growing affection organized itself. You handle this situation with remarkable composure, Jack observed, on an afternoon several weeks into their developing acquaintance, watching Olinda review legal correspondence with the same careful, focused attention she brought to most things. I confess I expected considerably more visible distress, given everything you have endured. I have decided, Olinda said, that visible distress serves primarily to satisfy other people's curiosity about my suffering rather than genuinely helping me process it. I find composed determination considerably more useful, both for my own well-being and for the practical matter of actually pursuing justice. That is, Jack said, a remarkably mature approach to circumstances that would justify a considerably less composed reaction. I do not believe maturity and genuine feeling are mutually exclusive, Olinda said. I feel the full weight of what occurred, Your Grace. I simply choose to channel that feeling toward productive action rather than performing distress. Jack found himself, across these weeks, increasingly drawn to precisely this quality in her, the genuine strength beneath her composed exterior, the particular intelligence she brought to navigating circumstances that would have devastated most people into complete paralysis. I find, he told her during one such afternoon visit, that I think about our conversations considerably more than the practical legal matters they ostensibly address would justify. Olinda looked at him with genuine surprise. Your Grace? I believe, Jack said carefully, that what began as genuine concern for justice has developed into something considerably more personal. I do not say this to complicate matters that already carry sufficient complexity, but because I find I have very little patience remaining for managing feelings I do not genuinely possess. Olinda was quiet for a long moment, processing this admission with the same careful consideration she brought to most significant matters. I find I have developed similar feelings, she said finally, though I confess uncertainty regarding how to manage them, given everything currently occurring in my circumstances. I do not expect immediate resolution, Jack said. I simply wanted you to know honestly what I have come to feel, allowing you whatever time you genuinely require to consider your own response. They did not rush toward any formal declaration following this exchange. Instead, the months that followed proceeded with a careful, deliberate patience that both of them recognized, without explicitly naming it, as essential given everything Olinda had already endured, the legal proceedings against the Pemberton family continuing their slow, methodical progress, Jack's regular visits gradually shifting from purely practical discussion into genuine, comfortable companionship, the specific quality of trust that develops not through dramatic gesture, but through consistent, patient presence. You have not pressed me toward any particular decision, Olinda observed, several months into this careful courtship, as they walked together through the gardens of Aldermere House on a clear autumn afternoon. I do not believe genuine affection requires pressing, Jack said. I believe it requires patience and genuine respect for whatever timeline allows the other person to arrive at their own clarity rather than mine. I find, Olinda said, that this patience has taught me something considerably valuable about the difference between the affection Cecilia and her circle pursued, calculated, strategic, ultimately empty, and what genuine care actually requires. The legal proceedings against the Pemberton family concluded after nearly 6 months of careful investigation and formal hearing, with a verdict that confirmed everything Jack's initial inquiries had revealed. Lord Pemberton's financial advisor had indeed deliberately falsified investment information provided to Olinda's father, with explicit knowledge and approval from Lord Pemberton himself, specifically to engineer the financial collapse that had allowed Pemberton to acquire the contested water rights at considerably reduced cost. The verdict required Lord Pemberton to provide substantial financial restitution to Olinda's family, along with formal public acknowledgement of the conspiracy's actual circumstances, a considerable reversal of fortune that transformed Olinda's family's situation from genuine financial desperation into modest but stable security, while simultaneously exposing the Pemberton family's calculated cruelty to exactly the kind of public scrutiny Lady Pemberton had clearly never anticipated facing. Cecilia Pemberton, whose own role in arranging Olinda's public humiliation became, through the proceedings' careful documentation, a matter of considerable public knowledge, found herself transformed almost overnight from London's confident social arbiter into a figure of genuine scandal, the specific reversal of fortune that society reserved for those whose cruelty had finally been exposed beyond any possibility of careful diplomatic management. "I find," Olinda told Jack, once the verdict had been formally rendered, "that I feel considerably less satisfaction in this outcome than I expected. I anticipated genuine vindication. I find instead something closer to simple relief that the truth has finally been acknowledged, alongside continued sadness for everything my family endured throughout this entire ordeal." "That is," Jack said, "a remarkably mature response to circumstances that would justify a considerably more triumphant feeling." "I do not believe triumph adequately addresses what actually occurred," Olinda said. "My father's health has never fully recovered from the stress of those months believing his own poor judgment had ruined our family, when in fact deliberate deception had engineered our collapse entirely. I find the verdict provides genuine justice, but it does not erase what we endured to reach it." Jack looked at her with growing admiration for this particular quality of clear-eyed honesty, the refusal to perform satisfaction she did not genuinely feel simply because the occasion seemed to call for it. "I find," he said, "that I admire you considerably more for that honest assessment than I would have admired a simple triumphant celebration." London's broader social response to the verdict proved predictably complicated. Some genuine sympathy for Olinda's vindication, considerable continued gossip regarding every dimension of the scandal's revelation, and a gradual but unmistakable shift in how society regarded both families involved. The Pembertons found their social standing considerably diminished, while Olinda discovered, with some surprise, that her own reputation had transformed from object of casual cruelty into a figure of genuine sympathy and admiration for the dignity she had maintained throughout the entire ordeal. "I am told," Olinda observed several weeks after the verdict, at a social gathering she attended with considerably more confidence than her circumstances had permitted months before, "that several of the very ladies who mocked me at that ball have now expressed considerable admiration for how I managed the entire situation." "People frequently admire courage in retrospect," Jack said, "that they failed to recognize or support in the actual moment it was required." "I find I have very little patience for their retrospective admiration," Olinda said, "though I confess some satisfaction in watching them recalculate their previous assumptions." "You are entitled to that satisfaction," Jack said. "I would not begrudge you even a small measure of it, given everything you have endured to arrive at this particular vindication." During this same period, Jack made a point of visiting Olinda's family directly, recognizing that her father's health and confidence required genuine attention beyond the legal proceedings' eventual resolution. He found Mr. Valemont in a state of considerable lingering guilt, despite the verdict's clear confirmation that the conspiracy, not his own poor judgment, had produced their family's catastrophic collapse. "I should have recognized the deception," Mr. Valemont told Jack during one such visit, with the particular self-recrimination of a man who had spent months believing his own failures had ruined his family. "I should have investigated the investment more thoroughly before committing our family's entire remaining fortune to it." "You trusted information provided by someone deliberately positioned to deceive you," Jack said. I do not believe reasonable diligence could have anticipated such calculated betrayal. You are not responsible for sophisticated deception specifically designed to appear legitimate. Olinda has told me something similar, Mr. Valemont said. I find I believe it intellectually, though emotionally I confess continued difficulty fully releasing the guilt. That is understandable, Jack said. I would simply ask that you recognize, alongside whatever guilt persists, the considerable courage your daughter has demonstrated throughout this entire ordeal. She did not merely survive catastrophic circumstances. She rebuilt her own dignity and pursued genuine justice, despite every reasonable temptation to retreat into despair. Mr. Valemont looked at Jack with growing warmth. You care for her considerably, Your Grace. I do, Jack said simply, increasingly so, with each passing month. This conversation, when Olinda eventually learned of it, moved her considerably more than she initially expected. You did not need to visit my father directly, she told Jack several days later, though I find myself genuinely grateful that you did. I wanted him to understand, Jack said, that his daughter's courage deserves recognition beyond merely the legal proceedings' practical outcome. I find your father carries guilt he does not deserve, and I hoped my own perspective might help, even marginally, in releasing some portion of that burden. It has helped considerably, Olinda said. I have watched him gradually recover something of his previous confidence these past weeks, in ways I had not managed to produce through my own reassurance alone. The genuine declaration of feeling that both of them had been carefully circling for months finally arrived on an evening nearly 8 months after the original ball, in the same Aldermere house garden where their careful courtship had developed its most genuine conversations, on an evening when the accumulated weight of everything they had navigated together, the conspiracy's revelation, the legal proceedings, the gradual rebuilding of Olinda's family's stability and reputation, had settled into something both of them recognized as considerably more significant than mere comfortable companionship. I find, Jack said, that I have fallen in love with you, Olinda. I have been managing this feeling with considerable care these past months, not because I doubted its genuine nature, but because I wanted you to have complete space to rebuild your own life and confidence before I complicated matters with my own feelings. Olinda's eyes were very bright in the evening light. I have loved you for some time as well, she said. I believe since the verdict's conclusion, when I watched you express genuine satisfaction in justice being served, with no apparent interest in claiming credit for your own role in achieving it. I have been managing my own feelings with similar care, uncertain whether what I felt represented genuine love or simply profound gratitude for everything you have done. And which do you believe it is now? Jack asked. I believe, Olinda said, that gratitude and love are not always easily separated, particularly when someone has demonstrated genuine character through consistent action rather than empty words. But I have had considerable time to examine my own feelings beyond simple gratitude, and I find what remains, beneath that initial appreciation, is something considerably more personal and complete. I love you, Jack. Not because you rescued me from humiliation, but because of who you have proven yourself to be throughout everything that followed. This mutual confession, however, did not immediately produce the formal proposal that romantic convention might have suggested should follow. Both of them recognized, without explicitly discussing it, that the considerable weight of everything Olinda had endured throughout the preceding year deserved more careful consideration than rushing immediately toward marriage, however genuine their feelings had proven to be. I do not wish to rush this, Jack said. Not because I doubt my own feelings, but because I believe you deserve the genuine space to consider what marriage to me would actually mean, beyond the immediate emotion of this confession. I appreciate that consideration, Olinda said, though I confess I do not require considerable additional time to know my own feelings clearly. Perhaps not, Jack said, but I find I would like us to continue building genuine partnership for a while longer, allowing our feelings to develop their own natural foundation, rather than rushing toward formal commitment simply because the emotion of this evening feels complete. They continued over the following months exactly the patient, careful courtship that had characterized their entire acquaintance. Jack, visiting regularly, both of them navigating London's continued social recovery from the scandal's revelations. Olinda's family gradually rebuilding their modest stability, the genuine partnership between Jack and Olinda deepening through consistent presence rather than dramatic gesture. "I find," Olinda observed, nearly 4 months after their mutual confession, as they sat together in the same garden where they had first acknowledged their feelings, "that this patience has taught me something I did not expect to learn, that genuine love does not require urgency to prove its own legitimacy. I trust what exists between us considerably more, having watched it develop slowly and deliberately, than I would have trusted a more hurried declaration." "I have learned something similar," Jack said. "I find that patience itself has become part of what I love about what we have built, not despite the careful pace, but because of it." He proposed nearly a year after the original ball, in the same garden where their entire courtship had genuinely developed, on an evening when both of them understood, with complete clarity rather than rushed emotion, that they had built something considerably more solid than the dramatic circumstances of their original meeting might have suggested possible. "I have waited," Jack said, "exactly as long as I believed necessary to ensure this moment represents genuine readiness rather than mere romantic momentum. I find I am entirely certain now, in a way that exceeds even my certainty 8 months ago." "As am I," Olinda said. "Marry me," Jack said. "Not because circumstances threw us together at that ball, and not because gratitude or rescue created some obligation between us. Marry me because I have watched you rebuild your own life with remarkable courage, because I have come to know you fully across this past year, and because I find I cannot imagine my own future without you as a genuine partner within it." "Yes," Olinda said, unequivocally and without reservation, yes. They were married in spring, in a ceremony that drew, somewhat to London's continued fascination, considerable warmth from exactly the social circles that had once participated in Olinda's humiliation, a reversal that proved to both Jack and Olinda considerably more meaningful than mere social vindication. Olinda's parents attended with genuine joy, her father's health having gradually improved alongside their family's restored financial stability, his particular relief at witnessing his daughter's genuine happiness visible throughout the entire ceremony. Cecilia Pemberton did not attend, her family's social standing having never fully recovered from the scandal's revelations, though Olinda found, somewhat to her own surprise, that she felt no particular satisfaction in this absence, simply a quiet acknowledgement that consequences, once set in motion, tend to proceed according to their own logic, regardless of anyone's personal feelings about the outcome. When the ceremony concluded, Jack turned to his new wife with an expression of genuine, complete happiness. "From servant's apron to duchess," he said quietly as they walked from the church together. "I find the entire journey considerably more remarkable than anything London's gossip could adequately capture." "I find," Olinda said, "that the apron taught me something the title never could have. Exactly who genuinely cared about my actual character rather than my social position." Many years after a single evening's calculated cruelty had transformed into the foundation of genuine partnership, Jack and Olinda Aldermere stood together in the grand ballroom of Aldermere House, the same kind of room where Olinda had once carried a champagne tray through crowds of mocking aristocrats, though this particular ballroom now held considerably different memories, having become, over years of genuine family life, the site of countless celebrations rather than humiliation. Their 4 children, 3 daughters and a son, ranging from 16 to 8 years old, raced through the ballroom's considerable space with the specific boundless energy of children secure in a household built on genuine love rather than calculated cruelty, preparing for their eldest daughter's very first formal dance, an occasion that had transformed the ballroom, for this particular evening, into a celebration of exactly the joy Olinda had once believed this specific room could never again represent. "You are thinking about that first ball," Jack observed, recognizing his wife's particular quality of contemplative silence as she watched their children practice dance steps with considerable enthusiasm and limited grace. "I am thinking," Olinda said, "about how certain I was, that evening, that I had lost everything genuinely worth having. My family's fortune, my social position, my own sense of dignity in the face of calculated cruelty. I find myself unable to adequately reconcile that devastating certainty with everything that has happened since. You did not lose your dignity that evening, Jack said. You demonstrated it more completely than anyone else in that entire room, including everyone who believed themselves your social superior. Their eldest daughter, Charlotte, approached them with the particular nervous excitement of a 16-year-old preparing for her first genuine formal occasion. "Mama, Papa, do I look acceptable?" she asked, executing a careful curtsy that suggested considerable practice. "You look remarkable," Olinda said with genuine maternal pride. "Considerably more composed than I managed at my own first formal occasions, if I am entirely honest." "Grandmother told me," Charlotte said, "that you once served champagne at a ball instead of attending as a guest. Is that true?" Olinda looked at her daughter with a complicated mixture of old pain and genuine, complete healing. "It is true," she said. "Some people, many years ago, decided that my family's financial difficulties meant I deserved cruelty rather than compassion. They were entirely wrong, and I learned through that difficult experience exactly who genuinely possessed good character and who merely performed it when circumstances proved convenient." "And then Papa rescued you," Charlotte said, with the simplified clarity children often bring to complicated history. "Your father recognized my dignity when others chose not to," Olinda corrected gently. "I rescued myself, through my own composure and courage. He simply made sure the people responsible for my humiliation faced genuine consequences, and he gave me the considerable gift of patient, genuine partnership rather than rushed obligation." "I find that version considerably more impressive," Charlotte said, with the particular directness she had inherited from both her parents. "So do I," Jack said, watching his daughter with evident pride before she returned to her dance practice with renewed enthusiasm. Their second daughter, 12-year-old Margaret, approached with rather more practical concerns than her older sister's romantic curiosity. "Papa, Edward says he intends to demonstrate his new dance step during Charlotte's actual ball in front of everyone. Should I prevent this?" "I believe," Jack said with genuine amusement, "that we should allow your brother his moment, provided it does not interfere with Charlotte's evening too significantly." "It will likely interfere considerably," Margaret said, with the specific weary practicality of a middle child accustomed to managing her younger brother's enthusiasms. "But I suppose Charlotte can manage one evening of mild embarrassment given everything else she has managed throughout her 16 years. Olinda laughed at this exchange, recognizing in her daughter's careful management exactly the kind of practical resilience she herself had needed to develop at a similar age, though under considerably more difficult circumstances than managing an enthusiastic younger sibling. Their youngest daughter, 10-year-old Eleanor, named for Jack's own mother who had died shortly after Jack's birth, approached more quietly than her siblings, settling beside her parents with the particular thoughtful stillness that had characterized her temperament since infancy. "Mama," she said, "were you frightened that night at the ball before Papa came to help you?" Olinda considered this question with the genuine seriousness it deserved, recognizing in her youngest daughter's quiet inquiry something considerably more thoughtful than simple childhood curiosity. "I was frightened," she said honestly, "though I tried very hard not to show it because I believed showing fear would give the people hurting me additional satisfaction. I have learned, since then, that courage does not mean feeling no fear. It means continuing to act with dignity, despite genuine fear." Eleanor absorbed this with the particular careful attention she brought to most things. "I think that is very brave," she said. "Braver than not being frightened at all." "Thank you," Olinda said, genuinely moved by her daughter's perceptive response. "I believe you are entirely correct." The ballroom filled, that evening, with music and laughter and the particular joyful chaos of a family celebration. Their 4 children dancing with cousins and friends, Jack and Olinda watching from the same general area of the room where Jack had first approached her with his unexpected question many years before. The entire space transformed through years of genuine love and deliberate joy, from sight of calculated cruelty into foundation of lasting family happiness. "Do you ever think," Olinda asked Jack as they watched their children dance, "about how different everything might have been if you had simply observed that evening without intervening?" I think about it occasionally, Jack admitted. I imagine you finding some other path toward eventual justice and happiness, because I believe your own remarkable strength would have produced it regardless of my involvement. But I am profoundly grateful I did not need to discover whether that imagined alternative was accurate. I am grateful as well, Olinda said, taking his hand with the easy familiarity of many years' genuine partnership. I find I have built, from what felt at the time like complete and devastating humiliation, considerably more genuine happiness than I ever believed myself capable of receiving. You deserved it from the very beginning, Jack said. You simply required someone brave enough to recognize it and patient enough to prove that recognition was genuine rather than merely convenient. Their son, 8-year-old Edward, ran toward them with the specific delighted urgency of a child wanting his discovery witnessed, having apparently mastered to his own considerable satisfaction an entirely new dance step that he insisted on demonstrating immediately. They watched him with genuine delight, the ballroom's golden evening light catching their entire family in this ordinary, complete moment, and Olinda felt, watching her children dance in the very room where she had once endured the worst night of her life, the full weight of everything genuine courage and patient love had ultimately built. Not merely vindication from cruelty, but an entire legacy of joy that no calculated humiliation could ever have anticipated or prevented. She believed her humiliation in that ballroom represented the complete end of her dignity and her future. He believed that genuine character, recognized and protected, deserved considerably more than mere rescue. And in the space between calculated cruelty and patient, genuine love, two people built a legacy that transformed the very room of their deepest wound into the foundation of lasting family joy. Some humiliations are designed to break you permanently. The bravest hearts discover instead that such moments can become simply the beginning of everything genuinely worth having. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Tell us, have you ever discovered that your worst moment became the beginning of your best life? Subscribe for more stories of love, courage, and the quiet bravery of rebuilding dignity after devastating cruelty.